Good morning, Vietnam.
He wants you to go, guys.
Redank, you're supposed to say something. Welcome into the thing.
No, it was William's turn.
Oh, well, I say good morning, Vietnam. Welcome to the Great Awakening. Your host here, the whole group is here today with conspiracy facts, and we're here to bring you guys the Great Awakening. So let's go over this. Redank, take it from the bottom.
All right, so we have the age of the golden beings. Around the sides it says, in service of the one, service to others, service to self. On the other side it says, asleep in the matrix, awakening and ascension. So this is basically just an overview of levels of awakening that are that you can reach basically through different levels of knowledge. These are basically different points of awakening. We found this on the Chans, 8chan, where Q posts. And this is just a cool little bit of information. We thought we'd share it with you guys here. So the very bottom level, right? It's sheep asleep. You want to hit him with the next level, William?
Yeah, and when you're the sheep asleep, you're just basically kind of like the mindless being in the matrix, just not aware really of anything, just aware at the core of just yourself, and not even really aware of that, just at the surface. You're just going through the emotions. And so the next level, what we have where a lot of people start to wake up. And this is where they start to grasp that there's something, a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. And this is where they start noticing things like false flags, things like September 11th, fake wars. And they start wondering, why?
Yep. And then you end up in chemtrails, vaccines, GMOs, fluoride.
And when you get to this level, this is when they start telling you, you're really onto the conspiracy, because you start noticing that these things are wrong, and you start awakening, and you start seeing them, and you're asking yourself again, why? Something doesn't seem right. And so these are kind of like the early stages of awakening.
And they're all coordinated efforts too. It's not like one single thing, these are all put into place for the same reason. And once you start seeing the coordination in it is when you start really freaking out, right? So that takes you to the next level, which is a lot of people are kind of finding out now, deep state, CIA, FBI, NSA, Fed, uncorrupt government, which, I don't think there is too much uncorrupt except for...
I think that was more the UN.
Okay, yeah, UN, there we go. Boom, that makes a lot more sense. UN, corrupt government, and fake news TV.
And so if you start looking around and everything like that, you see right now in the world, you see people at various different levels of this. And it seems like we as a society have been forced to start hearing about the deep state, and they've had to acknowledge that. So you see a lot more people are at least awake to the level that there's corruption of the deep state. Many of the people now even are awake enough to say that something's up, with September 11th and everything, and have woken at least that far. You still have some people that are asleep, but most people see the deep state. Most people are very leery of the FBI, the UN, and government corruption in general. And that brings us into the next level up. And that's where people start seeing, they have here the Vatican, the Jesuits. And what this is really trying to tell us more of where the top of the pyramid, what really runs the world that we're living in and everything. These are the organizations at the top of it that really have their hands in everything. And if you've heard before, people say, the world is run by religion, bankers, the Illuminati, pedophiles, Satanists, which are the sacrifice and the child trafficking, so forth. Pretty much that.
Yeah, that's very scary level. It's all connected too, right? All the Vaticans, a lot of these secret societies are centered around pedophilia and Satanism. Then that moves us up to the next one: AI, negative beings, Draco, reptilians, off-planet human slave trade. I know that sounds crazy for a lot of people, but you know, there's some interesting stuff, interesting source on all that actually, and it does take a lot of digging to get to that stuff and to find what's actually possibly, you know, going on. There's a lot of fake news out there, so you guys got to be careful. But there's some truth to this stuff.
Yeah, and, you'll see a lot of you know, different people who have talked about the reptilians, and to a lot of people, when you start talking reptilians, Dracos, you know, off planet, you know, ETs, that type of thing, it's so far removed from what people think. But you gotta be open to some things, right? Not open to everything necessarily, but you gotta be open. Like it's called the Drake equation, and in the Drake equation, it looks at all of the planets possibly in the universe, and it says mathematically, what's the chance of having another Earth and people having developed just like we developed here? And that kind of gives you a perspective. It can kind of open your mind to different concepts like this. But this is also saying what's pulling the strings of all of the organizations on Earth, like the Vatican, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the pedophile, the sacrifice, the child trafficking. Who's behind it all? Who's the puppet master, so to speak?
Exactly. That's why it leads into the off-planet human slave trade. And some of my own personal research, I've came across what they would call inner Earth beings, I guess, and they're of the reptilian race. I guess there might be up to 2 or more. You know, some of the stuff I'm not 100% on, but from what I was researching, they are the beings that have the cigar-shaped UFOs. And my other point that there just is something else other than us out there is that we do have the TR-3B, which is very well researched and documented. It's a government craft. Unofficially was created in the early 90s, but has been seen before that. And it's most of the triangular aircraft that have been spotted. And that's actually our military aircraft that some have speculated was reverse engineered at Roswell. But, you know, that's all kind of, you know, but there are some very interesting blueprints for this craft, and it's quite well known. But it's got to be reverse engineered for something, right?
Exactly. That leads us into the next level with UFOs, interplanetary corporate conglomerates, military industrial complex, and the Dark Fleet. And the Dark Fleet is more or less what you get out of a reverse engineered spacecraft.
Exactly. The whole fleet of them, right? You know, this whole thing of motherships and all that, it's not so far-fetched, you know?
And so as you start to see this, you start to see why we have our industrial complex. And go ahead.
Okay, so the next one is Secret Alliance, QAnon, Anonymous, White Hats, Military Patriots, Asian Secret Societies.
And this is kind of a big one. A lot of us following Q, a lot of the White Hats are kind of awakening into this level of consciousness. When you start following Q, one thing that you see is you see that all of these lower things are at work. And you see just different things happening and everything, but you know that there's strings being pulled above these guys and everything. And, you know, kind of like Q and Aspect, and on this journey, you start getting the insight into things that you wouldn't have, you know, possibly seen from the other lower level. Because if you look at most people, they start to awaken, and everybody's been here when you first start awakening, where you start saying, oh, crap, what do I do? And you get kind of depressed because you're like, there's these things that are over us that are corrupt and that are controlling everything, but who helps us out? Where do we go? And it kind of looks like you kind of feel defeated. And so when you start seeing where Q is coming from, Anonymous and these different things, these white hats, it seems like they're playing from a playing field well above where the other ones are at.
Yep, and we also link for this graphic that we are reading off of. If anybody wants to read along with us and see what we're looking at, it's a pretty amazing graphic that somebody came up on and dropped it in on HN for us. Somebody, Waterpicker, you want to read the next line, bro?
Yeah. I also wanted to note that I created a version of it that's easier to read if people can't read the source. Give me a second to load up the next line. Pyramids, ancient aliens, ancient builder race, Maldek, Antarctica pyramids, Moon and Mars civilizations, inner Earth. The two bits I want to put on are about Moon and Mars civilizations. This is where the cover-up with NASA comes into play. There is supposedly a ton of debris from ancient civilizations on both the Moon and Mars, and in fact the entire solar system. It's kind of interesting to think about. Let's just say if that's true, we're going to have a massive archaeological express when we enter space fully.
Yep, and then there's also a very strange phenomenon that are Antarctica pyramids, right? We already know about the other pyramids. There's really strange things that people don't know about them, though, that as far as what they line up to, their arrangement, their alignment, their size, dimensions, all sorts of stuff. There's really weird numerology to it. Also, there's pyramids speculated to be in all sorts of other places that you wouldn't believe. But those are just a few of the dimensions here. And that brings us into the next one. Extraterrestrials, positive being, blue avians, RA, law of one, ethereal beings, humanoids, insectoids, aquatics, grays, orbs, light beings, ascended beings, inner earth being, giants.
So
that's pretty heavy right there.
This one's heavy. Many people are familiar with the channel teaching of Ra, the Law of One. It was really popular, and if you haven't read it, you should probably read it. It's very insightful on the different things that Ra ends up telling us about our solar system and our being. And this is kind of on the same level as the Pleiadians, the other different star seeds and so forth, and you see the grays are on here, the aquatics, the insectus, I can't say it, but all of the other different beings, and this is where you'll see a lot of that channel teaching, especially in the New Age, that talks about these different star seeds and so forth. And that brings us into the next level, which is secret space programs, SSP Alliance, Sphere Being Alliance, and Mayans. And everybody knows that the Mayans were very well advanced, and people kind of wonder where they got their technology from and that type of thing. And so this is kind of where they're basically saying that information came from, and how high up that type of thought conscious really was. We suspect that there's a secret space program. Personally, I don't have more information on any of these things.
May I butt in for a sec?
Go for it.
It's not mentioned on the pyramid, but a British hacker, a hacker from the early 2000s, managed to breach American computers in one way or another. He discovered something. He noticed something called Solar Warden. If what he found was true, it's basically the Starfleet of the U.S., or at least Don't know the full details. That's effectively the functionality. It's a space fleet around Earth.
Very interesting. We'll have to check that one. So the next one that we get into is psychedelics, DMT, magic mushrooms, and all of the different, LSD, Mother Earth, Gaia consciousness, escape the matrix, that type of thing. And you've been hearing a lot about this from MK Ultra or people looking to, reach a higher level of consciousness, especially with DMT. They've been having experiences, and people talk about this a lot.
Yep. I can tell you firsthand experience, it will expand your consciousness. Yep. And ayahuasca is the natural form of DMT. Well, one of the ways to do it, it's from bark in tea leaves, and it's made in the rainforest area, Amazon. It's a very long, 8-hour trip, slow up and down, and then you have like DMT, more popular in America in the crystal form, and you smoke it, and it gets you the same high in about 5 minutes, but you just shoot, skyrocket there, and then you shoot just as quick back down. And it's a completely different kind of trip. It's short compared to the long, but it's still the extreme. And different things will expand your mind, whether you want to or not. Yeah. Yep. And ergot is the natural form of LSD. It is a wheat mold, and there were villages, entire villages, a few hundred years ago plus, where their wheat would go down and eat bad bread, and they'd go trip at the same time because they all had ergot. Funny story.
Yeah, they actually thought too. So there was a lot of reports of werewolf activity out there during that time as well. So it was due to the ergotism, people started acting like werewolves,
Okay, that brings us into the next level here, hyperspace, sacred geometry, fractals, black holes, singularities, and holograms. I know that with sacred geometry and fractals especially, a lot of people the shapes can trigger them and bring them to a higher level of consciousness, especially getting lost in looking at fractals and fractal art and this type of thing. When you open up to this consciousness, it can bring you up to a very high level of the perspective that you can see things and get awareness to different things. And I believe at this level, what you're really doing is you're tapping into certain thought consciousness that are kind of outside of time.
May I give a little detail on what exactly a fractal is for anyone that's listening that isn't aware of it? A fractal is basically a form of geometry that can have infinity encoded within it. Basically, you can zoom in on these things and there'll always be something new. Infinite regression, essentially. The most famous fractal is known as the Mandelbrot set. And these things are only fully visualized using computers. Not because there's something that can't be done by hand. It's just that the amount of iteration required to see the full fractal is just insane.
Yeah, and the golden ratio kind of exhibits the whole idea of a fractal because it keeps going in on itself and in, up and down. It's almost infinite. It is infinite.
And sacred geometry you will see with psychedelics. So you could use psychedelics to jump up right into that next level with the sacred geometry. And then we got free energy, anti-gravity, time travel, 4D space and time, portals, and stargates. That's a huge one. So the first one's Tesla Tech. He already had basically free energy. Could have had the whole world having free energy. Anti-gravity is the TR-3B. It has an anti-gravity craft using superheated mercury and nuclear power. Yeah, it's insane.
And so you can do, like, if you want yourself, you can do some free energy projects. They're all littered on YouTube at this point. So I don't think it's entirely a mystery as much as it used to be. But a cool science project is to make a light bulb, or to turn on a light bulb, basically using 3 magnets and a coil.
Boom. Boom. All right. And then the next one, because, well, we could talk a little bit about time travel, I guess, and 4D space and all that. This kind of stuff that's beyond the fringe. I mean, but it seems to be that there's already been a little bit of stuff established as far as proof goes for these time travels. There's some really weird stuff that we've seen as far as pictures with people that shouldn't possibly be able to have that kind of stuff in that time period. Weird kind of stuff like that.
Essentially, a ton of anachronisms, things that are out of place.
Yep. And then portals and stargates, that all kind of ties in with what's going on with CERN right now. The true intentions or goals of CERN.
They're not hidden either. The director of CERN actually says in a documentary what their intentions are is to make communication with the interdimensional beings and gain information from those beings.
What an ambitious goal.
Yep.
Until they open the
Stupid if you don't know what you're
portal.
doing.
Yeah, exactly. They might open the portal to the wrong beings that are way more advanced.
Yep. That's one of the fears. And then we got past life regression, quantum healing, hypnosis. What is that?
Higher mind, higher self, instantaneous healing, Akashic records, and oversoul. So a lot of this stuff here, I've had some experience with and everything. Past life regression. There's a guy, Michael Newton, and Michael Newton himself he's an atheist, and this part of it is kind of important for the story. But he's a hypnotherapist and a psychologist. And one day, when dealing with a particular patient, he was trying to help the patient get over what seemed like they were suffering a loss. And he thought at first, when they were suffering a loss, what seemed to be like they had lost somebody, that maybe they had regressed it and put it out of their mind, and they didn't know about the person that they had lost or something like that. So he puts the particular person into hypnosis, and he's trying to, bring it to conscious so that they can release it and whatnot. And so in doing so, on his second session, he ended up finding certain keywords that he could ask the consciousness, and the consciousness would go deeper and regress even deeper. And essentially, after the soul regressed to a certain point, it took him to what was considered the soul world. So when we die and before we reincarnate, we basically all go to this what is called like a soul society, so to speak. And in this particular soul society, we plan out our lives when we come here to incarnate. And it's a very fascinating read, and actually a very fascinating thing to go do is to get your past life regression. And try to see that for yourself. I did it for myself. It was really cool. It was a good experience in itself. The next one is the quantum healing, and I will group that with the instantaneous healing. Those are kind of like two types of healing. If you've ever done things like Reiki and everything, and different energy healing techniques, these kind of borderline on that same concept there. The original Reiki, they said, would be able to instantaneous heal. They said Jesus would be able to tap into this too, and instantaneous heal type of thing. And so these are basically using energy and the universe to basically heal. And then you have the Akashic Records, and the Akashic Records is kind of like a record of all time. You can tap into the Akashic Records through meditation, hypnosis, and very different techniques to tap into this. But this is supposed to be there for everybody to tap into, whether they use meditation or whatever. And then you have the higher mind and the higher self, and I would group those also with the oversoul. And these are kind of like your higher self is basically your tether down into the world. It sits higher up, and it basically translates from this level down to you.
That's amazing, bro. Wow, so you pretty much summed that up really well. Onto third eye, pineal gland, aura, light body, ethereal bodies, and chakras, chi. What's the other one, bro?
The other one's the Kundalini, and these all kind of tie back into like your soul itself and the energy from your soul and whatnot. Like the third eye is your consciousness to kind of see the metaphysical and everything. A lot of times when your third eye opens, you'll see, like, especially when you close your eye, you'll see a lot of purple, blues, that type of thing. When the third eye, the pineal gland sits in your brain, and they say that is where your soul actually attaches to, where when it connects to a human body. Auras are very interesting. People have all different types of colors of auras, and each of the auras mean different things. We even have different scanners. If you go to a place like Sedona, you can sit down and have your aura read, and it'll give you a whole machine, and it'll get the color of your aura and different things. I have an aura report that kind of tells what my aura is and what the meanings of everything is. The etheric body and your light bodies, when people do energy work on you, like again using either Metatron technique or using Reiki, this type of thing, they basically work on your energy bodies. It's said that when you manifest any type of sickness, it's going to generally come from your outside energy bodies first, the etheric bodies and so forth. That's where the sickness or whatever first manifests itself. And then by the time it gets to the physical body, it's basically been there for a long time. So the idea is that if you're going to heal a person, you would heal them from their etheric bodies, using these different energy techniques. Kundalini is another energy. I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I know you can do like yoga-like techniques to awaken the Kundalini with inside, and it's kind of like a chi, so to speak, and that you awaken it with certain body movements. Chakras, I think a lot of people are very familiar with chakras, especially nowadays. With the chakras themselves and the chakra system, you have your chakras that go as basically energy centers that sit down your body, and they each do something different in terms of what they harness. Like you even have one that sits at your crown, one that sits at your third eye, your solar plexus, and so forth, and they all deal with different aspects of what type of energy they bring into your life and how they help you manifest in your life. And there's plenty of stuff nowadays, especially that goes into chakras. The next one is the chi. Chi is all around. This can be called different things.
May I say some of those names quickly?
Sure.
Mana, prana, orgone, life force. There's a lot of them, but my mind's blanking right now. Get the idea. It's the energy of life itself.
Yes, and you can harness this energy, and things like you can do various different. I am drawing a blank right now, but you can do various different martial arts and that type of thing that will tap into the chi and with movements and so forth that will help you kind of develop and harness the chi with these movements. And you'll see it a lot of time in martial arts that that the chi is kind of like brought out a lot. Wing Chun, along that type of line.
Boom.
Okay, next we have meditation. Meditation is pretty straightforward. I think a lot of people now are more aware of what meditation is. There's so many different techniques and styles to meditation itself. You can have the guided meditations in which you're guided into something. There's meditations and more or less the Buddhist style meditations where you meditate into nothingness. There's the meditation where you try to target a specific thought and hold the focus of that thought without letting go of it. And you can enhance that technique over time by practicing the state of focusing and quieting the monkey mind so that you can focus. This taps into the whole idea of creation itself, like magic, manifestation, and that type of thing, where you can meditate to silence that, and then by pointing or by thinking of a particular idea and focusing on that and harnessing it, you can basically cause the creation effect to happen. And so people go, well, if we're creator beings, how come things don't create in real time? How come things don't manifest in real time? And part of that reason is because it's to kind of save us from an elephant dropping on our head. If you just thought about your thoughts from time to time and everything and how they flip all over the place, for one moment I want this, one moment I want that. If we didn't have that delay in there with an untrained mind, we would have elephants dropping out of the sky. The earth would be a complete chaos. So, one of the things is when you tap into these type of things and you tap into manifestation, magic, prayer, and all of these other things, because prayer is a form of meditation, especially when you focus and you pray really hard. These types of things allow you to tap into creation. Non-mediation, I do not know what that is. I'll have to look at that one. Awareness, that's like being aware of the surrounding. You can do that with a form of meditation too. Don Juan kind of goes into this, and Carlos Castaneda. The Buddhist mind kind of covered that too. The other one here, I don't know what these ones are. And Teo.
I can help with those in a sec.
Okay, and Teo, Tai Chi, and I Ching. Teo and Tai Chi, these kind of go along with the Chi and how to harness the Chi with martial arts for doing that. I Ching is a system in itself of divination and everything, and that's a very, very interesting system.
Now's your turn, Motherfucker.
1 sec, I'm trying to find as many of them as possible.
Oh, now we
I can't find the Dzogchen, or however you pronounce that, is a, I'm reading off directly from Wikipedia, but it's a tradition of teachings in Tibetan Buddhism aimed at discovering and continuing in the natural primordial state of being. It's translated as great perfection.
And you know what the Rigpa is?
A what?
The Rigpa, the next one to it.
Is the knowledge of the ground. Knowledge of the ground. It's actually related to Dozenjin. Within the ground in Dozenjin is the primordial state, so it's knowledge of the primordial state. Its inverse is ignorance, or the Marigpa, the Marika, or how do you pronounce that? It's right there on Wikipedia if you wish to look it up later. Right there in writing.
Awesome. Thank you, Waterfigure. So the next part that we get into is the Tibetan rainbow body, the light body ascension, telekinesis, telepathy, instantaneous healing again, levitation, matter manipulation, clairvoyance, Merkaba, tetragrammatation, and great solar flash. Some of these I'm aware of and everything, but I think they all kind of, point to the same thing. And these are more or less different ways to tap in at this different level. The ones that I'm more familiar with is the Merkaba. The rabbis used to do this and everything, and in a lot of New Age, we'll talk about the Merkaba type of thing. They said Enoch essentially in the chariots was taken up in the Merkaba and everything, and this has to do a lot, like you'll see it with Metatron, various different like Metatron meditations and different things like that. You'll see it in the New Age, but if you go back to early Kabbalah, you'll see that has a lot to do with that and the different techniques that they were using there. The tetragrammatation, that itself, they say in this one, a lot of the times where you will see with the rabbis, they talk about this technique dealing with Kabbalah also, but it's a different branch of Kabbalah. And they say like the whole Torah itself.
I made a typo. It's the Tetragrammaton. It's the word of God, Yahweh.
Yeah.
If you want to use the Latin script of it.
Yeah, and they say the whole Torah itself is a result of this. They say the Torah itself is one big name of God, and then in the different like scriptures and so forth just make up different names of God. And then they say like the Hebrew letters themselves play a part, because at some point they have the white fire and the different letters on the Hebrew letters mean different things. And this is another path, both for the Merkaba and this one. You could go to like sites like koshertorah.com, and the rabbis there is really good at this, and he has a full depth understanding of all of this and actually practices it. Clairvoyance, that's pretty straightforward, but humans can tap into that. And there's a lot of New Age books out there that talk about this type of thing, along with levitation, telekinesis, telepathy, instantaneous healing, and light body ascension. As far as the Tibetan rainbow body. I'm not familiar with that, or the Great Solar Flash. All right, I guess I'm going solo. So, all right, we'll go on to the next one. The light body activation, astral travel, astral projection, out of body travel, and interdimensional travel. And so I do have some experience with some of this stuff. The first time I had an out of body experience was in 6th grade. I got hit by a car. And when I got hit by a car, the first thing that happened is, I was on the car and I started spinning and I hit the ground. And it happened to be on Mother's Day. And, of course, my mom starts crying and everything like that. And, she's like freaked out. And so I stand up and I, go to say, Mom, I'm okay, and everything like that. And she's not seeing me. And I try to touch her and it's not working. And I look down and I see myself on the ground. And I'm like, oh crap.
I got a perfect example for people. Doctor Strange from the Marvel movie Doctor Strange actually used astral projection in a fight scene. Like, that's actually quite similar to what actually happens.
Yes, that is what happens. And everything's controlled by your thought. You have like an omnipresent state. You can think of something and you're instantly there in your mind. You don't really walk or anything like that, but you can see all things at once. When you think of it, you're kind of there and everything. It's very interesting. And then with the astral projection, like you said, with Doctor Strange, you can go to different worlds. There's many different worlds that you can astral project to in different dimensions. And Carlos Castaneda, in their dream books, they, talk about this one a lot. The different, because a long time ago, the Yaquis, and then different shamans, they tried to preserve their lives and save their lives by basically astral projecting into different worlds. And there's a lot of New Age books too that will talk about people doing different astral projections to different places and different planes. And that's kind of like with the interdimensional traveling too. And this is how you'll see in different stories where certain people would show up in multiple places at once. This also goes into some of the government projects in which, like staring at goats and different things like that, where they would basically astral project and, be able to do remote viewing and this type of thing. And, it's a pretty crazy experience because when you see yourself from out of body, you're looking down at yourself and you could go anywhere, like you can see all of these things because like at first it's almost like being in a dream. You're very aware, you're outside of your body and everything else. And if you go to where you see people at and everything, you will see all of those people where you were at, when you astral projected out of your body. It's kind of freaky, actually.
I would actually argue that dreaming and astral projection are the same phenomena. It's just the level of awareness and whether or not you're constructing your own personal world to experience or experiencing what's there beforehand.
I think it's a level of consciousness too, because in order to get to the astral body and everything, you can't be as deep as all the way asleep. It's a consciousness like right before you wake up, like in between waking up and in between sleep. And when you get into that level, you're out of your body essentially, and you can see way beyond your body, see all around you or wherever you want to project to.
So everything will have to be in the spiritual form, right? Not the physical?
Everything. Okay, so you yourself when you're astral projecting, your body is in like what you would say a spiritual form itself. But things around you and everything like that can be physical. So like when I'll astral project, I can see my house, I can see, like downstairs, I can see all of the people in my house, I can even see my neighbors and everything like that when, I leave my body in that, and they're very much real and in the physical. And in some cases, like where you would have different stories like Rabbi Akiva, after he had died, he had came back in the astral body form, and basically he would eat dinner every Shabbat with his family until, somebody saw that he was doing that type of thing. And this is actually what Jesus could have done, to be honest. But you have various different like yogis, they would travel this way. They would lay down. And it's even said in a cult, even now, they will do this type of thing with different hotel rooms because they know if they line up in certain places, they can travel instantaneously from one place to another and be there, with their body, and they can interact with people as though they're physical. And that's kind of like what Rabbi Akiva did, where he was, eating dinner basically on Shabbat with his family.
It could also explain some cases of bilocation, the ability to be in two places at once.
Definitely. Because when you're in this form, you're like omnipresent, so to speak. You have awareness of multiple things at one time. So it's different than where in the physical body you only see from your perspective. In this, you just basically see from every perspective at one time. And you're more aware of every different element of everything that's happening at once. Then we have the next level up. This is compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, wisdom, respect, and universal knowledge. And I think these are very straightforward in what they're talking about, because the compassion, forgiveness, these are the higher levels. These are where the higher vibrations of where you're at. And this is where wisdom and everything else starts to come in, because you start to see how things connect, right? Even that person that upsets you, you start to see that there's a place for this person in the world, and there's a purpose, and they're very much needed as much as you are. And, this is, as you get higher up, you'll see, the world is constructive of love. But this is where you start to be thankful for the different things, because with gratitude, it allows more good things to come into your life. And this is where you start to forgive and have compassion, that even though people don't understand, you don't have to go after them. You don't have to use the lower vibrations to be vengeful and that type of thing. You just let things go, woosah type of thing, and see the bigger picture. You learn from the things that happen to you.
Boom, next one.
The Bardo, the Buddha feels the higher realms, the lower realms, samsara. Now, these I don't know. The higher and lower realms, I have a little bit of awareness of this, but I have not reached this high and haven't touched anything here. So unless someone else has, I'm going to skip.
It seems like Water Picker does.
It's a passing understanding, but I think it's enough that I can describe it. Let me find where I put the infographic. The Bardo, according to Wikipedia, is the place between... crap. One sec. It's the state between death and rebirth, essentially. That's... The Samsara is the reincarnation cycle that's bound to the physical. It's basically the name for the reincarnation cycle, the cycle of death and rebirth.
Okay, so the higher and the lower realms and everything. This is talked about in the Tree of Life and Kabbalah, that type of thing. It's talked about because like we live and we manifest in the lower realm, and then the higher up realms are the higher spiritual realms. The Buddha feels, like I said, I don't know that one much at all, and so yeah.
Next.
Enlightenment, escape, rebirth, and
I have a definition for the Buddha field.
Go for it.
Beings. Crap. I don't see a pure. Oh, it apparently can be described as a pure realm. Specifically, a Buddha realm is a pure realm manifested by a Buddha or a great Bada, whatever. Beings born into a Buddha field may travel towards enlightenment without falling back into the lower realms. More generally, any place that is seen as a pure manifestation of wisdom is a Buddha field.
That makes sense. It's almost like thought creations.
I have some opinions on that I want to discuss after this video. Let's continue.
All right, so the next one is enlightenment, escape, rebirth, and Samara, and then the next is return to source, love and light, the one infinite creator. So this is kind of like where we're trying to get back to, so to speak. So the whole idea of ascending and going through the worlds and the lower worlds where we're currently at is basically we come down here and we learn, and we work our way all the way back to source, the unknowable, the one, the creator. And only at this level, when we reach this level of completion, do we have a complete understanding. And this is apparently where Adam was originally at before the fall. So this is what we're trying to work ourselves back up to. And if we work ourselves back up to this, we finally have the last one where we totally step inside of ourselves and we understand the lessons of creation and we become, the ultimate creator being that we were meant to. And so that basically concludes the Great Awakening and the age of the golden beings. Because at the top, essentially, we reach being golden beings.
Boom. That's a wrap. Thank you for viewing us. Please like, subscribe, share the video, and click the notification bell.
Awesome.
Man, you were awesome, William. I had no idea you